Welcome to Podkey Wellness, where today's catch-up runs from vision and AI to mood and agency. A lot of today's biggest questions come down to something surprisingly basic: what we notice, what we imagine, and who stays in charge. That shows up in artificial intelligence, in medicine, in classrooms, and honestly in how you get yourself through a low-energy morning. Vision sits incredibly deep in the story of intelligence. Once early animals could sense light and then actually see, they could find food, avoid predators, and locate mates. And that changed the pace of evolution in a big way. In humans, visual function takes up a huge share of core brain activity, and kids develop visually before they develop verbally, which helps explain why visual learning has been so central, both in biology and in AI. The recent AI boom did not come from one magic breakthrough. It came from three things lining up at once: neural network methods finally maturing, GPUs providing the computing power, and huge labeled datasets arriving at the right moment. A landmark example was ImageNet, built by Fei-Fei Li and collaborators, with roughly 15 million images across everyday object categories. On the ImageNet benchmark, people made about a 4% error rate when recognizing 1,000 categories. Neural nets started rapidly closing the gap after 2012, and by around 2015 to 2016, machines had passed human performance on that task. What's still striking is how differently machines and humans learn. Current AI can absorb enormous numbers of examples, recognize partial objects, and even generate plausible motion without being handed an explicit model of muscles or object physics. But humans are still dramatically more data efficient. A child can often learn a concept from a handful of examples, while modern AI usually needs massive corpora and huge compute budgets to get similar results. AI does show a kind of creativity, but it is a different flavor from human creativity. A system can recombine vast stores of prior information into something novel, like AlphaGo's famous Move 37, which was surprising and original within the structure of the game. Human creativity also draws on autobiography, emotion, memory, and lived experience, which is why a generated image and a deeply felt work of art are not really the same thing. Imagination matters here because it is more than daydreaming. It lets us simulate likely events, reconfigure possibilities, and ask those useful little questions that start with what if. That is why creative work looks more reshaped than erased. AI can expand options and execute faster, while people still supply viewpoint, characterization, feeling, and meaning. There was also a grounded way of talking about manifestation that I think is helpful. Instead of treating it like magic, the idea is disciplined alignment: writing, visualizing, talking, and behaving in ways that get your mind and actions rowing in the same direction. Future self-rehearsal seems to matter because mentally simulating an experience can activate related sensory and motor brain regions, and making your future self emotionally vivid can shift present behavior. That is part of why athletes rehearse performance mentally, and why seeing an aged version of yourself has been linked to better saving decisions. The practical tools are refreshingly ordinary. Imagine the sensory details of an ideal day. Write out a big list of possibilities so your real preferences have room to show up. Or even try a make-it-worse exercise so the opposite actions become obvious. Across all of this, the clearest ethical theme is that AI should support human agency, not hollow it out. People need to keep their motivation, dignity, and real choice about whether to use these tools and how to use them. And some things should stay plainly named for what they are. An AI-generated apology may be polished, but it is not the same as a felt human emotion. Good governance also cannot be left to a few companies or investors. It has to include professional norms, ethics education, industry standards, regulation, public participation, and language ordinary people can actually understand. Some of the most promising uses of AI are in science and medicine, where the upside is less about novelty and more about speed, synthesis, and better decisions. AI can retain and connect more information than any single person, potentially spotting cross-disciplinary links, helping with diagnosis, and moving research findings toward clinical use faster. At the same time, medicine is messy in the real-world sense. Data are limited, bodies vary, and something like liver anatomy is different enough from person to person that training fully autonomous surgical systems gets risky fast. Still, there are partial wins already, including reports of AI distinguishing medication-induced hypotension from vertigo, and one robotic-assisted liver surgery case with roughly 10 times less blood loss than a typical operation. The next frontier beyond language is embodied in spatial intelligence, where models learn from video and robotics and start interacting with physical environments instead of only describing them. Spatial systems can generate 3D or 4D worlds from text, images, or sketches, with uses ranging from robotics training and architecture to healthcare, education, entertainment, and industrial design. A hopeful version is not robots replacing people everywhere. It is robots taking the dangerous, exhausting jobs while human judgment and care remain central. Education may be where this all feels most personal. AI can be an amazing tutor, the kind that helps a student keep exploring organic chemistry after office hours instead of getting stuck. But it can also undercut agency if it turns learning into passive consumption, easy cheating, or one more endless stream of frictionless entertainment. Teachers and parents need practical support here, not panic and not vague optimism. Feifei Li even reached out to her child's elementary school principal right after ChatGPT launched, which feels like a very human response to a very big shift. And prompting is worth treating as a real intellectual skill. In the best case, it works a lot like asking good Socratic questions, where the quality of the inquiry shapes the quality of the thinking. A few well-being practices stood out because they are simple enough to actually use. A 10-minute walk can change your state fast, partly through a burst of dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline, endorphins, and growth factors, with longer-term effects on the brain as well. That phrase, neurochemical bubble bath, is a little cheesy, but honestly, it gets the point across. Cold exposure can work similarly as a reset. Even ending a warm shower with about 20 seconds of cold can create an adrenaline surge that cuts through sluggishness and leaves you more awake. Nature helps too. A deliberate 5-minute pause in a natural setting can restore worn-out attention. And one hospital study found that patients with views of trees and grass needed half as much pain medication and spent 3 fewer days in the hospital. And then there is the softer stuff that still matters. Self-compassion, letting yourself do something playful, or turning outward and helping someone else when rumination has you in a headlock. Even ideal day visualization belongs here, not as fantasy, but as orientation. When you can picture what you want to hear, smell, see, touch, and who is with you, anxiety often eases because the destination gets clearer, even if the full map does not. That's the thread running through all of this. Better tools are useful, but attention, imagination, and judgment still matter most. Thanks for spending a little time with Podkey Wellness. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.